Welcome everyone. Tanse Bojo, Gijagate Indigenous Cause, Nimki Benesse Dodem, Atopameziwak Cree Métis Icelandic Isles Kwayandao, Benesse Okaninasing Donjaba. I just wanted to greet everyone. My name is Erin Dixon, and I'm with the RAD operations team and really grateful to be coming in today. We have the opportunity to open with Ogema and Gizis as we close out the Strawberry Moon and move towards solstice with someone who's celebrating their birthday. So what an amazing opportunity to welcome an incredible Ogema, an incredible, what we say chief or a traditional chief in the way that they lead Dean Sayers to open us up as we begin our gathering today. And again, a warm welcome to everyone.
Miigwech Erin, Bojo Kenewea, Ogema Nebanagoshing Goyakiset Nakas, Miigwech Kibijaya, Miigwech Kim Kibimba Bingo, Miigwech Sema Kibijaya. I just by chance this morning, the Sema made its way to me, and the person that gave it to me said he wasn't sure why I needed to have the Sema today, but that it would be put to good use. So I really want to thank Sema, that Sema spirit, for finding its way to me to be able to help us in the work that we're doing this afternoon on this call. And as I sit here overlooking Rice Lake, I don't know if you can see it out there, but my phone's got its zoom setting, so it's got a blurred background, but I'm sitting here looking over the water at Rice Lake, and I think about the challenges of water. And I have my Mijo Bajo shirt on from a very powerful spirit in our neck of the woods that is the most powerful spirit on Lake Superior and is part of so many of our understandings of how we are to relate to our Mother Earth after the water. So it was a blessing to be able to hear the women leadership speak, and they talked about the ability when they were young, at least one elder, how they would be able to go to the water in Northern Ontario and drink right from the water in the lakes, and how it's become such a challenge. And it reminded me of the work that still needs to be done. And it reminded me of that water and how important that water is, that crosses all realms and crosses all facets of our work and our life here in this world. So Miigwech Nebe, Miigwech Gebingook, thank you for being here. Miigwech Bajaya, thank you. We appreciate the work that our water continues to do, fulfilling that original responsibility and obligation as per their instructions from the Creator. We give thanks for all of creation who's never forgotten their responsibilities. Miigwech Chimigwech. And we ask for guidance to help us find a better understanding of what our responsibilities are. And we thank all of creation, including all of the clans, all the animals, all the trees, the fish, for lending us insights periodically and reminding us of how we need to work. So I pray on your behalf today and ask Sema to take our prayers to the Creator today, and to beseech the goodwill and the blessings from Ogema Nado. So Chimigwech, everybody, thank you, and I'm wishing you all a good, productive meeting that will reverberate throughout our future and have beautiful effect on our upcoming generations. Miigwech, 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 Miigwech.
Chimigwech, Ogema. And thank you for leaning in. It was nice to have you so close, and just again honoring your journeys and your birthday today. And thank you for taking the time on this date also to be with us. Yeah, we're very grateful. And I think some of the words that we heard and some of the stories about the women speaking is that the spirit of the RAD Network itself has been moving for some time. We know that these types of pathways have been held by the people and have been brought forward. And the RAD Network represents the spirit of that movement and ecosystem. And it continues to take forms based on the visions and the gifts that those people have brought forward. And so grateful to welcome everyone. We have some of our RAD leadership circle here, our operations team, And the questions that we have brought into the center here, I think, is probably central for everyone in their work around the nature of right relations. But if people aren't familiar and you're coming in for the first time, we welcome you. We'll have ways to connect at the end, but to visit the website, and there's lots of information there from the larger community about the visions for the conservation finance pathways that are naturally rooted in Indigenous rights and responsibilities and knowledge. And the nature of RAD itself is returning to that root and basically standing on the ground that we are here on. And so that's, I think, some of the heart of our conversation. So maybe we could pull up some of our slides that we have prepared just to reflect back some of that, and just to move forward some of our conversations. Here you can see the image from St. Mary's First Nation when we were hosted during the vision gathering. And for sure at the center of those conversations, what was moving us was right relations and all the different contexts that people come from and the meanings that they bring forward to it. And I think one of the questions that we're having is, what does it mean in action? So much because of Western society has become objected or objects, where they become things that we look at or point to. But what does it mean to actually keep it alive at the center? And it's something when we came together as an operations team with all the different histories that we carry, all the different family experiences within our relations, work experiences. We carry so much knowledge and wisdom to actually understand what that means at the heart of the work that we do on the inside. And so much, I know so many of us have experienced that integrity on the inside doesn't reflect the very essence of what we're calling forward. And in the sense of standing in our sacred or natural law responsibilities to walk with that practice and to understand how to make meaning in the different relationships we carry or organizations is something that we had the chance to reflect on together as a team. And so our team wanted to put forward a reflective question for everyone gathered as we listened to some of our Ogema, some of the community leaders that will be speaking today, is in this moment with a growing pressure on our lands and rights, what practices can we advance to uphold Indigenous rights at the center and practice right relations? And the beautiful thing and the paradox about right relations is the right, or that resonant aspect, comes from where we come from, and we continue to make meaning and strengthen it as a relationship itself. So it takes away the duality of right and wrong and moves it more into the complementary, and bringing forward our traditional governance and understanding, and moving from those grounds that Elder Albert Marshall spoke so strongly about during our vision gathering. We wanted to create an image to show sometimes, especially when we think and we speak about the power of our matriarchs, they often guide us about the very interpersonal, about the nurturing of life at the center of all the relationships we carry. And so making meaning of it on an interpersonal level, bringing forward the life so that instead of the suppression or the experience that we have doesn't move laterally, it actually becomes a generative soil in which the energy for that which we've visioned to bring to communities can move forward in a way that we grow and we transform collectively. So part of the right relations in action for our team was to create, we're calling it kind of like a framework that builds on the guidance of the leadership circle, their terms of reference, and some of the other work. And you can just see here that natural flow, like water from the personal, which we understand as kinship or interrelationship. We have a lot of areas within RAD that we work to transform and move practices forward. And then, of course, the systemic change and that transformation, or moving together in the good life, and really keeping those stories of the prophecies and the ways that we understand ourselves at the center, and moving from the ground of our sacred and natural laws, and the power that we have collectively within that. So that's where we, as a team, I won't go much more into our right relations work as we still continue to co-create it and bring it forward to our leadership circle. But it's something that, again, was created across our team and is something that was built from our personal experiences to give the opportunity to move wisdom forward in the work that we're doing together. So beautiful image that was created by Lara and Randy So maybe we'll move to the next slide as we continue to bring that question outward. When I was within Feather Carriers or Community Life Promotion is when I first had the chance to meet Elder Carolyn. And in that space, we often talked about Ogema. They had the Ogema Dream Drum from Wasauksing. And many people might know the spirit of Ogema being the big-hearted people. And especially times like this, having our Ogema, those big-hearted people, those people that can bring our minds forward, are central. For times we've always gathered around those voices, but right now there's a muffling across technology, across multiple elements. So when we thought about the conversation and we brought it to the leadership circle, there was a lot of energy here, and there's so much to speak to. So just as we turn towards that, I just want to acknowledge you know, the gratitude our team has to Ogema Dean Sayers, to Leora, who was also one of the founding visionaries who put a lot of energy in. We are so grateful to have you back. And Chief David Knox, who has been at the heart, as well as within our leadership circle, Terry. And so just a big gratitude from all of us as we turn to you to listen to some of your words around what does right relations look like in action, especially during our times. And Terry let us know that when his son is unwell. So Terry, thanks also for joining us, and maybe we'll open to you, and we'll start off with that reflection. And without saying, most of us are used to Zoom, but feel free to use the chat openly. We'll look to your questions, comments, or things that you might be carrying as we come into closing. So miigwech, and thanks for listening.
True. Why cautious nas or sloppy hot wayas? Why cautious nas or sloppy hot wayas? Clock wanish. Sutis hot wayas. Katsi in pli maxti. Ha aqua pin hot wayas. Chama pis apin. Ukla sish sicha. Istak shit Tla-o-qui-aht. Good morning or good afternoon. Terry Dorward. My Indigenous name is Sicha. I come from the House of Highway out here on the very west coast of Vancouver Island. My nation is Tla-o-qui-aht, people that were once different, and it's always good to get into right relations with a prayer before any talks. We are connected to the Nuu-chah-nulth peoples. And it's important to understand, where we come from. As in my talk, I will talk about our traditions and our culture and our current situation. When it comes to the various bills that the federal government and the provincial government is enforcing on us, and as Tla-o-qui-aht peoples, to having right relations, even when you enter the rainforest, you say a prayer and you ask for protection and you ask for guidance, and seeking knowledge, understanding that the animal kingdom have their own haiholthi, their own territories that you're entering into. So it's really important to conduct yourself in that way. As Tla-o-qui-aht peoples, we have a shared agreement. We have right relations with Chims the bear. Historically, we had to respect that the bear also needs to access salmon. So what we did was we have a shared accord with Chims the bear, and we relocated entire communities just so that the bear can have access to salmon, as well as have peace when they're sleeping in hibernation. As Nuu-chah-nulth, we have a core belief of Hishuk Itzawak, everything is connected, everything as one. And that relationship to the land and our people has been fragmented ever since the Indian Act. And in Tla-o-qui-aht, we created what's called a Tla-o-qui-aht tribal parks to stop deforestation, to get back into good relations with the ancient rainforest, to create that necessary balance of Hishuk-at-Sawak. Everything is connected, everything is one. So I've participated as I come from a hereditary chief's family here in Tla-o-qui-aht, and a speaker for R-Tla-o-qui-aht Highway, and I've sat at the leadership table at the Union of BC Indian Chiefs, who have expressed strong opposition to these bills 14 and 15, and the federal government's bill 5, calling for their immediate withdrawal. The BC Bill 15, the Infrastructure Projects Act, grants the provincial government broad powers to expedite infrastructure projects, which of course are undermining Indigenous rights and sovereignty. As Indigenous sovereign nations, we have inherent rights. In Tla-o-qui-aht Nation, we have no treaty with any colonial governments. Our Tla-o-qui-aht Highway, our hereditary chiefs, we do continue our sacred roles and responsibilities to their Higholthi, which is within their chief's domain, everything that's within it. And as Indigenous peoples, we have seen, many responses from colonial laws, such as the historic direct actions against, the Indian Act, the White Paper, constitutional amendments, and Bill C-45. We've participated in resistant movements like Red Power Movement, the Constitutional Express, Idle No More, and of course the land and resource conflicts that also sparked movements from, the Mears Island logging protest, the Oka crisis, Gustafson Lake, Ipperwash standoffs, Burnt Church lobster dispute, and ongoing resistance from these proposed pipelines. Stuart Phillip, who we like to refer to as our general, our president of Union of BC Indian Chiefs, who was with the warriors and fishermen on the boats during the Burnt Church lobster dispute, always tells us it's important to encourage our people to show up to the front lines. And I truly believe we are on the verge of another national movement to once again to defend our Indigenous title and rights from both provincial and federal governments. The federal government Bill 5, sections 21 to 23 of the bill allow the executive branch to bypass existing rules and processes in 13 laws, including the Canadian Environmental Protection Act, the Indian Act, the Impact Assessment Law, through regulatory process that does not need to be approved by Parliament. And these sections, is really important to understand, are what's known in the legal community as Henry VIII's clauses, a reference to a king who preferred to govern by decree rather than Parliament. These bills are fast-tracking the theft of natural resources without proper consultation. And again, this announcement of one economy for Canada fails to include Indigenous people and the development of our own economies through an Indigenous lens. And where I work, IISAAK OLAM Foundation, we're supporting Indigenous nations in their IPCA, Indigenous Protected and Conserved Areas, development, and IPCAs take a holistic approach in implementing strong, healthy economies that meet the needs of both communities and the environment. IPCAs, in our understanding, is a demonstration of Indigenous nations getting into right relations with their traditional territories in a modern context. It supports holistic approach in implementing strong economies. In Tla-o-qui-aht, when the provincial government was allowing imperial metals to explore gold mining within our tribal park, we opposed it, and understanding that money talks with these governments, so we pursued alternative run-of-the-river strategy, revenues that support nation building. In our collective fight, it is important to stand strong against the destruction of lands and resources, but also pursue alternatives to create healthy, regenerative economies. IPCAs that are Indigenous-led, committed to conservation, and upholds Indigenous title and rights are healthy alternative political, spiritual, social, and economic solutions. IPCAs, tribal parks, or salmon parks, whatever you want to call your relationship to the land, can heal broken lands and broken communities. So it's really important that we amplify our collective voices and really stand strong against these fast-tracking bills and become unified in our approach, become a unified front in defending our lands. So with that, Tla-o-qui-aht.
Chimiigwech, Terry, and I feel very grateful for your words. I know when I had the chance to meet you in person, just the spirit of warriorship emanates from you, from all the work that you do. So grateful for your words. And again, welcome to stay with us, or if you need to leave for your son, please, take care.
Thank you.
And we wanted to invite Leora forward, and many of you might be familiar with Leora's work, but we also wanted to celebrate her completing her PhD, her journey, and starting a position. We've been having more conversations with her recently again, and so grateful you could join us here.
Miigwech, Dean, and Terry. I want to say Mino Dipshkan to Dean. Hope you have a great birthday today, and thank you for spending it on Zoom, of all places. And yeah, apologies if I scatter really quickly. There was a smoke alarm that went off. I don't know what's going on there. So Mispares Indigenous cause, maybe getting big and do them. Mommy winini, onwe honwe minwa. Tetawano ala lakota Anishinabe kwayandao. The chinchilla nupawia machiapi, kebe kong and donjaba. Gaya onwe honwe akin in nuwa. So calling in from one of my ancestral territories today, and I am officially Indian Act official registered band member with Kitigan Zibi and Anishinabe. My grandmother came from there, and my family has a long history to the Ottawa River watershed, as well as the Niagara River watershed and Lake Ontario, and we have also ancestry in the plains related to the Ogema Nation. So I call on all those ancestors to help out as I'm trying to understand what it means to live during this very complicated time where, people are looking for identity and people are looking for a way to understand our relationship with the earth. And so when, the question of, I think, right relationship is the one that's on the table. And I really appreciated how Ogema Dean opened with that conversation about water and about Ikwewag and our relationship with water, because that's where a lot of my work sits. Years and years ago, I started trying to do what I could to understand messages that were coming from and through the water, the Nibe, and how it might be that we change our relationship and our understanding of what water is, because I don't know that I was devoting enough time to that. I want to say maybe like 15 years ago was when I really started to think about it. And as I've traveled the journey of trying to understand the messages that water is sending, it's really about trying to understand how we understand life through the lens of our seasonality as Anishinabe, how our ancestors lived in time with the seasons, how moving and rotating around the land in a non-sedentary way is part of who we are. As I mentioned, my grandmother and grandfather, many of my ancestors are interred at Kitigan Zibi, and so that is their resting home. But at the same time, even 2 to 3 generations ago, it was really about moving through the territory seasonally. So settlers interpreted that as, empty land or areas that were not inhabited, but that's not correct. And so when we think about today, what we know is like a province or a state or a country or any of those kind of configurations, those are not the true boundaries that delineate us as peoples. And so Omamiwaniniwag is a word that was taught to me by my great auntie, Batchewana, who is now passed on and is in the spirit world. And she talked about how that word refers to people moving up and down the river in a constantly dynamic motion. And so what we see today with infrastructure that causes so much harm to water and to our relatives who depend on and live in the water, and birds and bears and all the others who need our healthy river systems to live, we can see that the constructions that were made without Indigenous consent continue to compromise the lives of those relatives. And so I study fish a lot. I look a lot at patterns of migratory fish, but in particular, the American eel, which is on my father's side. That is his totem, that is his clan. And so in our clan systems as Anishinabe, Dean mentioned the clan system, it's used by Anishinaabe in a very specific way, what our totem means to us. For the Ongwe, which is where my father comes from, they have a way of understanding their clans. But in any event, the history of my family is very tied to the American eel, which is experiencing decline and violence and just so many threats to its migration from the ocean and into the water for decades now. And when we think about the world that we live in today, we're talking about, Indigenous rights and UNDRIP and all this exciting sort of discourse that takes place. Yet at the same time, the state is still in some ways calling the shots for what happens on land and water and the protections and the ways that those relationships are sort of mediated. So when I think about the many years I've spent listening to elders from nations all across Chimikanackmanasing, all across Turtle Island, and they talk about how we need to honor what our ancestors gave us, I'm always thinking about that movement and about moving as the seasons move and about moving as birds, animals, and fish move, because they are our teachers. They teach us how to be in relationship. And so our human configurations can help us to learn how we might reduce the damage that's happening. But ultimately, human beings do not have the right to cause such immense harm to all these natural ecologies that we are also a part of. So when we do these things to water and we do these things to the relatives of the water, we do these things to ourselves as well. That includes contamination and desecration and all these other elements. And so thinking about a right relationship going forward is also about acknowledging that, prophecies of Anishinabe and other nations belong to those nations. That's knowledge that's passed forward from our ancestors and to be used in a way that respects and honors the lineage of that knowledge. And so that is a place where I sit. Everything that's been sent to me has come through working with with my ancestors and with my family's relationships. And that doesn't mean that they're all perfect, right? But it's like really investigating and knowing who I am and where I come from helps me to understand and really appreciate everything that Ogema Sayers said in the beginning opening about women's relationships with water. And so I'd say with that, Miigwech Bizendaw, thank you for listening to what I've said, and I hope it's helpful in some way. Miigwech.
Miigwech, Leora, thank you for all of your words and the wisdom. I just wanted to let everyone know that we haven't been able to touch in with Chief David Knox. I know Terry's been in touch with him, but he's also moving quite a bit and taking care of things. So He may come in, and if so, we'll turn to him by just sending our thoughts and prayers towards him and all the work that their families are doing. So with that, we'll be able to turn back towards our Ogema.
Well, thank you. Thank you to both of you. Our previous speaker, Gima, our leader there from our relatives on the west side of Turtle Island, and from Kitigan Zibi. Thank you for your thoughts. I appreciate the ability to share a little bit of our neck of the woods in the Great Lakes area and share with you some insights that have been brought to life more recently through elders and knowledge keepers. Now that it's safe to do so, at least somewhat safe, we're free to talk a little different as far as what our relationships actually are. And I wanted to share with you a story about our canoe. And our canoes are made out of birch bark. And this is the time of the year that we harvest birch bark. And at least where I'm from, we wait till the second heat wave. And this was this week, and that's when you cut the birch bark on the tree, it'll make a popping noise. And that's how we know that it's ready to be harvested. And we talk to it and we ask it to join us and help us in the work that we do because it's alive, and it's going to continue to be alive as it works with us and carries us and supports us and guides us. And we make those birch bark canoes. We put all of our good wishes, our hopes, our trust, and we really depend and rely on and trust the birch bark, the birch, and all the other medicines that make those canoes. And even when we're on the water, when it gets foggy, what the elders tell us is that just put some sema in the water. You don't even have to paddle, and your birch bark will lead you where you need to go. And that's a very beautiful relationship that we still have an understanding of. There, in the center of the Great Lakes, is where I'm from. It's called Baoting, and it's a place where you can hear the rapids, the water, and as you get closer, it gets louder, and it's a very big, like a waterfall that has changed now because of the settlers. I don't know, doing things with regards to shipping, etc., and economics. But regardlessly, that's where I'm from, and so there's been a lot of prominent gatherings over time, even prior to the arrival of the settlers. Baoting or Sault Ste. Marie was very important for us as a people as well, and a lot of gatherings happened there. Many nations would gather there, and we would feast, and we'd have ceremonies, and we'd have political meetings, and we would have social meetings. We'd talk with our communities as they would come there and meet. But it became known as well as a place where there was a lot of treaties that were signed. And when people would come to our treaties, we would have meetings with our villages, wherever they might come from, and they would have they call it a shkudekan, a council fire in their village. And the community would gather around that fire, and they would have a log about 6 feet long, the wings, the eagle span wing, the span of the eagle's wings, and a log about that length would be sitting by the fire, and we would all talk about what we expected to see in the meetings that were going to happen in Sault Ste. Marie, and that log would listen. And even when the different delegations would make their way to Baoting for treaties, they would have these community meetings, so they knew that there was going to be the wishes of the people, the relatives, the relations would have their say. And the leadership, the chief would have distinct, we don't call it chief, that's colonial, we call it Ogema, and the leader, and the one that's the spokesperson that carries the voice of the people in specific issues. And they would put that log in the canoe with the leader, the Ogema, and his paddler, and they'd bring all of their garb, their equipment, their whatever they needed to travel by canoe to Baoting. And when they got to Baoting, there would be ceremonies, and you'd be cleaned off before you came in to the village before the treaty making or the meeting. And when you got to the fire, you would bring your log and you would put your log on the fire, the council fire. And all of these different clans, bands, leaders from around the Great Lakes would bring a log, and they would each take a turn and put their log in the fire, and that became the Shkudekan, the fire that would provide us counsel. And the wishes of the people would reverberate through the fire to the leadership, so nothing would be forgotten, nothing would be omitted, nothing would be missed as far as how we would make decisions. And it would be guided by that grandfather that sits in that fire spirit that would help us remember not only the wishes of the current people, but the ashes from previous fires would also be there, so that we would always be able to rekindle and remember the hopes and the wishes of our ancestors. And it was from that perspective that we continue to have these fires, and we can remember, because you gotta think about going to these meetings with the newcomers to our lands, and they had foreign documentation papers, because we never had papers to help remember. It's our ancestors that, even though they didn't speak English, they incorporated these beautiful thoughts and reserved jurisdictions and expectations of our people into what we now see today as these very thorough, well thought out. You would wonder how we were able to make sure that our thoughts were able to be continuing to be alive here in 2025. Very well put together treaty relationships. And that's how we related. We related with our people through spirit, through fire, through feasts, through ceremonies, through shake tent, through sweat lodges, connecting with our ancestors. A very rich, full gathering with many generations and many animals and trees that would participate in these gatherings. And when in particular, when we would gather specifically for treaty, I remember an elder telling me one time, he said, when we left our villages, we got in our canoes, and our canoes were so full they barely rode above the water. And in our canoe was our people, yes, but also was the moose, the deer, the fish, the trees, the plants, the water, all of those things that we inherited from the Creator, including those things that make us nations, our land, our language, our law, our people. Our canoe was so full, so rich, so beautiful that barely rode above the water. And we went to treaty making. And when we got there, we saw these, they called them these big canoes that were pushed by the clouds, which was the tall ships. And in those tall ships, they were empty. They had nothing. They rode really high in the water because they were light. They didn't have all of those inherent jurisdictions. We sat with them and we shared with them those things that they needed to survive here, and we gave them some access to our natural resources. And then the elder said, guess what we had when we left those treaty-making gatherings? We still had those things that define us as a nation. We still had our land, our law, our language, our people. We still had the fish, the deer, the moose, the trees, the water, all of those inherent obligations. We are still in receipt of a full canoe. That's what we have in our canoe. We have many relations in our canoe that still look to us to protect them and look after them, including all of those things that walk upon and swim upon and fly above our mother, the earth. So it's really good to take inventory, and it's concerning that there has been these assumptions by these new governments on our land that they have jurisdiction over the trees. They have jurisdiction over our Jasin, our grandfather, those big rocks, the minerals. They're alive. The copper is alive. The gold is alive. My father, he would have been 105 now. My mom's 101. He said his dad was the hereditary chief in our family, I'm Crane. We talk about those stories, but he said when they were young men, they weren't allowed to work in the copper mines because people were going to get hurt because they didn't respect the spirit. They didn't understand the connection to our people. And when I mentioned earlier, the spirit, the Mijo Pijo, that spirit is made up of copper, gold, silver, all those minerals, but mainly water. And it's so powerful that, and it will pull you down if you don't follow that natural law, if you don't look after the water properly. And you notice that on this story here, this picture here of Mijo Pijo, there's no face on there, because the elder said if you ever see the face of Mijo Pijo, it would knock you down. It's too powerful. It's full of medicine. It's full of all of those natural minerals. And if you know the song, you can sneak up to that Mijo Pijo and you can put him to sleep, and you can take your knife and you can scrape his horns, and the medicine is so powerful it can heal anything that ails our people. Very beautiful ways of life, very beautiful relationships. These assumptions that are made by these governments on our land are misaligned with what we gave them at treaty time. They've made it forever and ever illegal for us to assert what I'm talking about. Our protection of the land, our protection of the minerals, our protection of the waters, to use those sustainably in kind ways and talk to them as they're alive and ask their forgiveness when we need to use them. We were put in jail and killed up till 1951 for acting that way, for aligning ourselves with our inherent jurisdictions. It's not that way anymore. These governments on these lands have run amok and are way outside of their delegated authority that we gave them. We are still the party that gave them rights. Canada and Ontario don't give us anything. We delegate to them. We provide them what they need. It's been all turned around, and that's really important because we need this water. We need this air. We need these trees. We need these animals for the next 7 generations. So it's good that we talk about relations, our relatives, and how we need to always reflect on that as we contemplate and make decisions. So thank you for a moment to at least share a little bit of insight, some of our views and where those views might come from, at least in our neck of the woods. Miigwech.
Miigwech. I feel so grateful for the generosity of the teachings, and just the ground that I think I just kept getting this vision of standing straight up in what we're talking about, but just through those stories and the teachings, and to speaking to things in that way is very healing. Just over time, I've been welcomed back, just growing up on the Georgian Bay to where my kinship ties are from, and working with Elder Sykes Powderface, who was from Minithni in the Coldwater and Morley. He was part of the National Indian Brotherhood, and he would always want to talk about the First Nations Declaration. He would talk about it before the AFN formed. And he said as a young man, he was so excited coming out of school, and Tonkawagichi walking buffalo, his teacher stopped him and said, first you have to talk about the land. And so in their declaration, and every time we would gather with different community leaders, he still would pull it out and talk about all the wisdoms we heard today from all of the speakers. And then it would talk about some of those elements that were almost like ethical space would translate it. And so I'm so grateful just to be able to be guided by the wisdom here. And maybe we'll turn to you. I wanted to, it's just in the spirit of your birthday, Ogema, if you wanted to share a few words. And then just as the RAD Network, we have a few things and just a song that we'd like to close out with. So miigwech, everyone. And again, keep the conversations moving.
Thank you. Thank you, Erin. As you are all pondering and sharing thoughts, I think about the fire again. And when it's time for us, as we have our council fire and we gather and we share thought and we take inventory and we start to think about what we're going to do and where we're going to go, we acknowledge that fire and all of our ancestors and all of creation for making our gathering so rich. And what we a lot of times would do is the tobacco, the sema. The elder would go around the fire with sema, starting in the east, and put sema all the way on the ground, and have an unbroken circle of sema all around the edge of the fire, all the way around, and all the way back to the east where he started it. And then you'd say, "Kiwe," which means you can go home now, because all of those spirits that had come to help us, we have to send them home. And before we do the fire like that, when we close it, we'd usually have a little bit of food. We'd feed them. We'd smoke our pipes with them. We'd ask them to take our prayers to the Creator. And so today, as we close our fire with Sema, we give thanks for all of those spirits that have made their way here to help us and guide us, and thank them. And we'll close that fire off completely. And that Sema and that fire will work together to take our prayers to the spirits, to take our prayers to the Creator, to have the work and hopefully the blessings of the Creator reflect what we're looking for, and help us in our journey and safely return to our villages. So miigwech for the ability to help out today and share some of what was shared with me with you. And that's what our elders would tell me. They would say, you need to share what you have as much as you can, because there's no good for us if you take it under the ground with you when you die. So you have to share those things. So I hope things were good for you. They were sure good for me, and it's good to take inventory of our relationship with the Spirit. So thank you for that opportunity and ability today. And it's good to see you all today. In particular, David Flood. I've known him for years now, and thank you for being present with us. And I really appreciate the good work that's happening. Carolyn as well was supposed to be with us today. I know she's working on glyphosate. The Chiefs of Ontario, by consensus today, rejected the use of glyphosate for aerial spraying, which is wreaking havoc in our communities and the forests. So Carolyn presented on behalf of the TEK elders, the traditional ecological knowledge keepers elders, and with the chiefs today, and she did an incredible job. And by consensus, the chiefs rejected Ontario's use in our forests of glyphosate. So wherever you are, whatever you can do, it's appreciated. When you do your land acknowledgements, wherever you are, finish off with, we do the acknowledgements. However, I am pledging and we are committing to do the following. It has to be action-based. Acknowledgement doesn't really move the yardstick for us. So if you can help with taking action, whatever that might be. One last thing today, the Ontario Regional Chief was going to speak, and he was making his way to the podium, and he stopped, and he said, you could hear him a little distant from the microphone. He said, "There's a spider here. I don't know if I should move him or go around him, but so someone came and took the spider outside. And that was so beautiful to see, because it's so nice that there's still semblance of the understanding of that everything has spirit and everything matters. So something to think about. Everything matters, everything has spirit, and everything has a role. And it's so good to take inventory of those relationships and respect them, and do what we can to help the future generation. So once again, miigwech, 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 miigwech.
Miigwech from all of us, and a happy birthday. It's so nicely already heard in the language, but we're celebrating you and wishing you safe travels as you continue to make your way north. And we're so grateful for all of the guidance we have. We have such incredible leadership circling around this. So please do be in connection. I know we'll probably bring up a slide if you want to be in touch, but we are moving more into a regular rhythm, and you'll be hearing more from us in different ways. So, and if there's anything that you feel moved that a conversation is needed, please do be in touch. And I wanted to close out with just a few rounds of an honor song to give thanks, to wish happy birthdays, and also to give thanks for those original instructions and to be centered in them and strengthened by them as we make our way together. Yahweh, Yahweh, Yah-yo. Yahweh, Yahweh, Yah-yo. Yah, Yah, hey, Yah, hey, Yah-yo. Way, Yah, Yah, hey, yo. Yahweh, Yahweh, Yah, Yah, hey, yo. Yahweh, Yahweh, Yah-yo. Yahweh, Yahweh, Yah-yo. Yah, Yah, hey, Yah, hey, Yah-yo. Way, Yah, Yah, hey, yo. Yahweh, Yahweh, Yah, Yah, hey, yo. Gonna. Miigwech, everyone.
Amapi.
Mama.
Wapich Kanao.
Wama Pequodman.
Mama P.